Hey everybody, Jesse here. I figured this is an easier way to do these presentations when we can't all meet up. That way we can just kind of talk through it. If there's times we can't meet in the future and I want to share information, maybe we'll just do this if it's easier for you guys. Again, I want to make this all fit your schedules as best I can. For those that don't know me, I'm Jesse Fioravani. I'm a class of 2019 student, just trying to help in any way that I can. So this is a slideshow on the dedicated period for Step 1, life cycles and infectious disease, and how to prep for third year. This is something that's good to watch around the December, January turn of the year when you're in second year. So for disclaimer on me, I do cuss. I'm biased. I have opinions. They're not always just the one way to do things. Please do things however you feel. I'm only here to advise and help in any way that I can. I try to just give you something loud and concrete, which is why I might come across a little strong, but again, I do not know everything. If you already have a system that does work, please don't change it. Just keep doing what you're doing, and please share what you're doing with others to make the entire medical school experience a better experience for everybody. And then, of course, nothing I do or say and anything that I do when I try to help out other students is in direct representation of the University of Colorado. I don't represent them, I don't represent the faculty, and I don't represent the student body. I represent my own opinions and me trying to help. So for Team America members, this is a reminder that there's the Google Drive. I'm going to be emailing this presentation, so this link will work to get you there. You should already have this somewhere. Again, this area has all the images for Sketchy Farm and Micro. I don't have Sketchy Path on there. If you would like to upload those, please do, and please share this drive with others that need this information. It has a free PDF version of First Aid 2017. I recommend keeping this on your computers at all times. I still use it moving forward into third year and for Step 2 prep. Golion, if you like the audio recording way of studying for Step 1 while you're on runs and stuff like that, it's good, but pretty much only during dedicated once you've really reviewed everything. Otherwise it can be a little overwhelming because it is a Step 1 prep directed at out-of-country students that have already reviewed everything and are getting ready to take the test. Also, we have all the images for Kaplan High Yield, good stuff, and then the textbooks that I thought to be relevant for class. You might be already past that at this point. And then please put whatever you think has been valuable for your experience on there and pass this on. So anything you thought was really key, really clutch, got you through the year, put it on there and please do share it. So for the dedicated period, what I wanted to touch on was whether or not you kind of thought about the dedicated yet. Again, I like to get you information before the school might be talking about it, because when they do talk about it, it can kind of come on as kind of a storm, as though you already should have been doing something. And so what we're here to do is discuss dedicated period. Again, it's 5 weeks. I highly recommend taking time off at the end of it, minimum of 4 days for yourself. I'd say a maximum of 10, depending on how prepared you feel you are. And it's good now to kind of think of like, what materials have you found valuable that are external materials? What timing did you want to do this dedicated? Did you want to study certain subjects in a row? You might not be thinking of this yet, but I'm going to help you with that moving forward here. And then what practice tests should you take and when, and which ones are valuable and why, which ones are not. How are you going to take breaks? That's very important, because if you do not take breaks, you will burn out. And then, like Explore.org was something that we always kept on screen when we were studying. It's just video of animals playing around the world live on camera, and it's just we had it on the screen on the side while we were doing practice questions, just to remind us that, yeah, it's a big world out there. So this is something that's on the Team America Drive. It is a Word document that is a template that me and a couple other students used and tailored to our own needs. As you can see, this is a dedicated schedule. This is not something you're doing during class. You can try this on the weekends if you want, but you might be a little overwhelmed by this. But this is kind of presuming you have the day off and all you're doing is studying. So for me, I liked to, whenever I did world questions or practice questions, I liked to do them, immediately review them the same day within an hour of taking them, because there's data showing that the repetitions at an hour, 24 hours in 1 week, if you repeat things like that, you have better retention. So starting out in the day, I would review the world questions from the day before to try to get that 24-hour revamp of things I already had reviewed. So I do Q banks, you can kind of see on here. I like to do them in 40 blocks and then spend the time after that reviewing them. Again, do not go through these questions on World. It's a waste of a World question if you just go through and only understand the right answer. Study all the wrong answers, why they are wrong, the pathophysiology, and everything underneath them. You will not get as many question numbers done this way, but you doing 1,000 questions that way is like you doing 5,000 questions that way, as opposed to the inverse, where you only understand the right answer to that one question, and you don't really know how to think about the question from multiple angles, because I guarantee when they ask it, they will ask it from multiple angles. So understand every wrong answer. That's why I gave myself 2.5 hours after every QBank to really get into it and teach myself all the stuff, not just why is the right answer right. Let's go back all the way to the pathophysiology. Let's draw some things. Let's draw things from anatomy. Let's draw blood flow. Let's draw metabolic pathways. Let's draw whatever we need to draw. Again, drawing over and over, I endorse wholeheartedly. And you can see here I had a pretty good chunk of time every day to go to the gym, a walk, outdoors. Please move your body. I recommend starting your day with academics, breaking it up in the middle with something to get outside, walk your dog, do something, and then continue with academics after that. This really helps in so many ways. It's ubiquitous that everyone thinks that it does. I know it helped me. It kept me sane when all I was doing was studying 10 to 12 to 14 hours a day. After that, you can see the afternoons. I'd bring in a new topic. I'd use my external resources I was comfortable with. By the time Dedicated rolled around, I had pretty much narrowed myself down to Pathoma, First Aid, Text, and then the RX QBank to solidify little things as I went, as well as reviewing Sketchy. I thought that was a good time for that as well. From prior things, again, a QBank later in the afternoon, review those questions, again, giving yourself, I kind of developed the fact that it was 2.5 hours. I thought it'd be shorter than that, but that's how long it took me to really teach myself everything. And then at night, I would give myself something mentally a little easier, which I thought Sketchy was, because it's just these pictures, and you got to remember this picture. And I thought that was really helpful to kind of end the night with something kind of fun. Sketchy is a lot more of a fun way to learn than other things. And obviously I'm biased towards Sketchy. If you use other resources, please tailor this to your needs. And at the bottom you can see, for myself, I had a good friend, Joelle, that was studying with me, but in a different place. We would just check in here and there and keep each other on pace, because I found that when I was just studying alone, I'd kind of slack. But if someone else was, we'd wake up and say, okay, 8 a.m. start, go, and then talk to you later, maybe 10 p.m. just to say when we're finishing. It kept me on track. And then we had a mutual, that online log was just a Excel spreadsheet that we shared on Google Docs. And so we could see how many questions each other were doing, what we were struggling with, what we were doing. And it kept my question numbers up, kept me really dedicated when I got feeling burnt in the middle. And one of us would keep going while the other wouldn't, and kind of pull us along. It was a very friendly thing, not competitive, just friendly and encouraging. So this is my example of a daily breakdown during Dedicated. I encourage you to build one of these on your own and kind of break it apart how you will. To further that, I broke up the Dedicated period into each day, days 1 through, I can't remember, whatever the last day was, but you kind of build this beforehand based mainly around your weaknesses, some of the practice tests you might take leading up to Dedicated. Which again, there's no expectation to take practice tests leading up to Dedicated other than the one you just took, which was a CBSSA that everyone was required to take, just to let you know where your weaknesses currently stand. Although it shouldn't be a surprise to anybody that they're probably everywhere, except for maybe GI, DEMS type stuff that you just took. It's supposed to be that way. If you haven't reviewed it, it's going to be weak. So build this day by day based on your weaknesses and kind of tailor it. I would introduce new subjects on 2 to 3 day blocks depending on how difficult they were. And again, this whole document is on the drive, so please just go ahead and review that. This is also a way to kind of look at, okay, when do I want to take practice tests? There's the NBME/CBSSA, same thing. Those are the ones written by the National Board of Medical Examiners, the same people writing Step 1. And then there's UWorld exams. I highly recommend UWorld exams overall for pretty much everything. And NBME, I'll talk about in a minute whether I recommend those or not. But you want to also look at this before you get into your Dedicated, just where you're going to put these tests, where you're going to put everything. As you can see here, I had my biostat strategically timed to be right before the exam because I was kind of cramming it. I recommend doing that. Ethics, legal, things that might not be sticking so much, I did kind of later in the game and just made them stick how I could. But I thought this was a good way to kind of visually represent your entire study schedule all in one glance. You can see your practice tests, you can see your subject matter, and a good way to kind of bring subjects in a systematic fashion so you're not constantly terrified of jumping all over the world trying to bring things in. So when do you want to take your practice test? You already take one, and it was to kind of make you fear you're going to be either very afraid or you're going to get false reassurance, because some people pass that test, which means you passed step already, which might give you false reassurance, and then some people bombed it like I did, and you might feel like you're never going to pass this test, and it's going to be awful. So I encourage you, if you failed it, just know that that's kind of where you're supposed to be. You're not supposed to be able to pass step at the turn of the year without doing a full review of all systems. If you have passed it, and you're feeling kind of false reassurance, I would suggest keep the fire going because you're going to need it. One thing I want to emphasize, NBME/CBSSA, same thing again. Those tests are meant not to be a learning material. You're not learning new material with these tests. They're terrible for this. And if you get the impression that they're supposed to be used for that, they're not. They are to train you on several things. Stamina. Can you take this test? Can you do it? This is shorter than step 1, and I'll talk about step 1 in a minute, how long it is. But these NBMEs are typically around 5 to 6 hours. They are shorter than step 1, but they still give you a good test of, can you really keep up with this? Can you cognitively even do things on your 4th or 5th block of questions? And that's good training. The closer step gets, the more stamina training you want to do. It is a good way to estimate your overall score. The NBME is plus or minus 5 to 10 points where your score for step 1 will be. It's a pretty good estimate. However, you don't know if it's lower than it will be or higher than it will be. You get kind of ballparks around it. And the last thing is that it identifies your weaknesses broadly. You've already seen these score breakdowns. You can see like, oh, okay, I'm not that good at GI. I'm great at neuro. And so it helps you kind of focus your studying and rearrange your schedule. And again, this schedule here, rearrange it in real time. If you're crushed, like here, if I was crushing psych, I needed more time in Palm. Well, of course, take it off and put it there. You don't need to rigidly stick to this. So NBME can be good for that. You can also see NBME words things. Again, this is the group writing step 1. However, I will tell you right now that every NBME form, a form is a fancy word for their versions of tests that are available to you to take. These are tests from prior question banks that are not used anymore. There's form 15 through 19, I think, currently available. I'm sure that number is growing. From test to test, they are extremely different. One is not worded like the other, and one is not as easy as the other. Some are more doable, some are incredibly hard. So I'm not so sure how valuable it was for me to really get a gist of how they word things. However, you will hear that feedback. These tests are incredibly time consuming, so you got to gauge whether or not you want to do this, because again, what you're getting back from this is not learning new material. They do not give you questions you got right, you never see again. Questions you got wrong, you get back, but it does not tell you what the right answer is, and when you try to find the information, it might be confusing. And it also does not do what World does, where it teaches you the material. It is just showing you are wrong. A lot of the questions you got right, you probably came down to like 2 or 3 and made an educated guess. You'll never know what you educated guessed properly because there's like close to 200 questions on these things, and you can't think back to that, whether or not you got it right. So it's not good at teaching you. So that's why I want to leave with that. World tests. These are the whole package. They give you stamina training. They teach you the materials. And again, you want to think they're time consuming. They're very time consuming because when you learn this material, just like these, when you're doing a question bank, it takes you a lot of time to go through it. And so these world tests take a lot of time. I spent 2 days probably just doing one and then reviewing all the stuff from it again, looking at all the wrong answers, making sure I understood those as well. Let's see if I have it here. Yeah, okay, so we'll talk about this in a second. So step 1. This is what step 1 currently looks like. If this slideshow is being played in the future world, it might look different. You have 7 blocks. They are 40 questions each. They are 60 minutes per block. You do not interrupt blocks in the middle unless you're having some kind of an emergency because you lose that time. The overall session is 8 hours. So you can see this. You have 7 blocks that are an hour long, and the total session is 8 hours from start to finish. You have an hour of break time to use however you will. All right? And I'll talk about that here at the bottom. And this link right here takes you exactly to the step 1 site if you have any questions about how it's laid out. So if you want to recreate this experience, your practice tests will not. Both the World and the NBME are 1 to 2 blocks shorter than the real deal. If you want to recreate the real deal, just line up 7 full random 40 question blocks in World, do them in an 8-hour period. Take the breaks as you may, recreate the whole test. Don't turn your phone off, make sure to be left alone, and do what you will. Now, when these breaks, when to take them during step, I recommend, now again, this is very subjective because depending on who you talk to, these are all my opinions. I recommend doing the first 2 blocks back to back. Do one, submit, take a breath, start the other. Unless you have to pee, don't leave the room and just knock them out back to back. Then, take a break between every single block after that. This adds up to about an hour if you take a good break, because when you're going into a step test, you have to lock all your stuff in a locker, go through like a fingerprint ID check before going in and out of the room, be escorted in and out, frisk, So it takes time to get in and out of the testing room. And so you lose a lot of time in these little short breaks just to that, but I still recommend doing them between every one because, again, step 1 isn't just an academic test, it's a stamina test. By the time you're hitting question 240 onwards, you're getting cross-eyed, you might not even, your brain is just fried. That's why it's really great to do practice tests or stamina training like 7 World back-to-back in about the couple weeks leading up to step. You should be able to pull these off with some kind of cognitive ability in the last 2 40-question blocks that you're doing. However, these breaks, take them, meditate, use mindfulness, drink water, breathe, just calm down. Do not think of the block you just completed. That is a horrible idea. Do not think of what you might or might not have gotten wrong. Your job is to move on. You take the block and you clear it from your mind. You go relax, you lower your shoulders, you just sit, eat some snacks, and breathe, and just go back in. Do not beat yourself up. Do not what you've done with tests in the past and wonder about the right or wrong answer. It's not the time for that. You're there to take tests, use as little energy as possible, be incredibly efficient, answer the questions, and keep moving. All right? Okay, how do you interpret these things? Again, like I said, these NBMEs can be really hard or really easy. You'll get one that you'll crush the heck out of and get a 220, and one you'll bomb and get a 240 and wonder why you're getting these scores. It's because everyone else has taken these tests, and the score is not a hard line. It's based on averages. It's based on a bell curve. And so if you get a score you didn't feel you deserve, it's probably because everyone did really well on that. And people take these forms at different points in time. Let's say you take form/practice test 15 right at the beginning of dedicated. Well, last year everyone took it at the end of dedicated. You get a really bad score and you're really scared about that. Well, everyone else scored higher because they took it later. Don't read into these too much. Again, these are kind of like ballparking your number, but this number is relative. That's why it's hard to say. That's why it's hard for anyone to say, like, hey, these things are pretty good at accurately estimating your score. That being said, I will say, like here, NBME is maybe a little closer to accurate. I think other people would endorse that as to the score they actually ended up with after step 1. Now again, when you start dedicated and your score is a 190, well, guess what? That's fine. It is accurately estimating your score at that point in time. It is not accurately estimating your score that you will get, because you're going to be doing so much work between then and when you get the actual score back at the end of step 1 that it's going to go up quite a bit. So don't read into the beginning of dedicated as where you're going to end up, and don't freak out. Just keep going. How many to take? That is up to you. These things cost between $50 and $70 per test. I found the one we did initially useful. I found one more of them useful, and after that, I think I did 1 or 2 more. I did not find them useful, and I found them to be a waste of money and a big waste of time. Again, these take up an entire day because I didn't get to review the material. I didn't get to learn it. It was just stamina training. So for stamina training, after 1 or 2 of these, maybe I would recommend moving on. Move on to just doing world blocks back to back to get the stamina training, so you can actually learn from it, because that's what's more important. You'll get stamina and learning, not just stamina. So you might get that point where you're saying, this is a waste of money. Well, you're probably right. World 1, World 2. These scores will typically be anywhere between 10 and 15 points above accurately where you are in relation to the step 1 score. They overestimate your score pretty consistently. Not to say that they're easier, you're just more used to World. World 1, your score might be pretty good. World 2, your score might not change, because again, people typically take these in the 1 then 2 order, so they take 1 at the earlier time of dedicated and 2 later on. Well, again, scoring is relative, so even though you might have done a lot better, you get 80% of them right instead of 70%, your overall score might not change because it's going off of the relative score. So keep that in mind. Don't freak out when your World 2 score doesn't go up. It's just telling you again, like, yeah, you're sitting right about here. And again, this depends on timing. You do World 1 really early, it's going to be low. World 2 really late, it's going to be high. Unfortunately, I can't give you any solid information because all these are based on 2 things. 1, when you take them, and 2, who else took them and what they got, right? Okay, that's all I have on that. For timing on these, I don't think I put a slide here. No. You time them how you will. I wouldn't recommend taking any other practice tests until you start your dedicated, unless you really feel like you're doing a lot of studying now and you want another assessment of where you sit. Where your weaknesses are and where you want to work on that. If you have time to do that during life cycles in ID, more power to you. Then go ahead and pop another one of these puppies off before dedicated and really identify some weaknesses so you can start to get dedicated strong. If you're like me, you will not have had time yet to do a review of everything. I would recommend getting a first pass at everything before taking another practice test. First pass being at least a glance. And then take the practice test again, because no duh, you're going to have a weakness in GI if you didn't review GI. No crap, you're going to have a weakness in anemia if you didn't read that. Like, certain things are obvious. You don't need to identify weaknesses you know you already have. It's a waste of time. So if you already know things you need to work on them. Once you feel somewhat confident, take a test. All right? And again, practice tests I'd recommend taking anywhere between 3 and 5. That includes World and NBME combined. Definitely take the 2 World. So that third would be 1 more NBME, up to 5, which would be 3 NBME if you really feel like it. NBME, money game, yeah, it costs a lot of money. Sometimes people get a glitch where you have the answer like this highlighted. This is an NBME question. It accidentally highlighted the answer, which is the answer, and that way you know it and you can go learn this and know that you're learning things properly. If you get this glitch, I recommend screenshotting it and sharing it with your friends. You are paying for this information. It is supposed to help you learn, and this is pretty much the only way it does is if you end up with this glitch. But again, don't treat this like anything different. Understand these wrong answers. Know why folic acid's deficiency doesn't look like this. Vitamin A, vitamin B6. What does vitamin D deficiency look like? Know those as well. I'm not highlighting the answer here just so you can focus on that. Remember the wrong ones. And then this is on the Team America Drive. You have a bunch of screenshots from prior students of right answers to tests that you paid for. So you should have this information. If you get this glitch again, please take screenshots and upload them so you can share them with each other. I do not recommend going through this in advance, because what you will do is go through this in advance and then take an NBME test that has these questions on it and do better than you should. All right? If you're done taking NBME tests and you're kind of confused by all of it and you're not going to do another one, go ahead and look at these screenshots. Then they are good learning materials. So again, do not look at these before you take your NBME tests. Do it afterwards. All right? They're on the Team America Drive. Okay, you should have scheduled step 1 by now. If you haven't, please do it. It starts getting to the point where, again, I recommend 4 to 7 days off prior, highly. In that range, you'll see when you start trying to schedule step in the area of, say, Colorado, where everyone's taking it at the same time, you won't even be able to get that date unless you schedule it really, really quickly. So this is more for future generations. I know most people in Team America have already done this, but if you haven't done it, please get on it. If you're taking it in a different state, you might have whatever date you want. But if you're taking it in Colorado, your date, if it's between 4 and 7 days beforehand, is most likely already gone by mid to late January period. Infectious disease and life cycles. We had a brief discussion in the group about what people were using. It's pretty a lot of variety. People sometimes use class, sometimes people use only external. In a nutshell, for life cycles, you're going to be relying more heavily on the class materials. And I'll talk about those in a minute. For the DDID, because again, infectious disease is now expanding on what you learned a year ago in disease and defense, I would focus on Sketchy. I did only Sketchy and glanced at class material to see what areas they were covering and when, so I could pace with them. Like, oh, you're doing fungus this week? I'm going to do all the Sketchy fungus, all right? I only did that. That's it, and I did just fine. Passed everything just fine, and the knowledge was retained into dedicated because Sketchy has a much better model at retaining information than does the slideshow PDF for me. Again, everybody's different. In infectious disease, sometimes lectures go off the deep end into a certain subject. You're going to be plating things. You're going to be, looking at stuff in labs. It's just for you to get experience in labs. None of that is on step 1 in that exact fashion. And sometimes they go too deep into fungus and parasites, where step 1 focuses on different stuff, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So for life cycles, I'll talk about that in a second. You're trying at this point, I'm sure, to just do the infectious disease and defense that relates to STEP only. For STEP, all bugs and drugs are fair game, things you covered a year ago in DD and everything you're covering in ID. And this step 1 is tailored to the United States, in which case bacteria and virus are the big boys and fungus and parasite are lower. Globally, parasites go much higher. And class kind of likes to talk about parasites a bit more, but this is pretty much a score breakdown on STEP. If you come across a parasite question, it's only 1 or 2 in the entire question bank that you're going to run across on the real deal. So you want to know your parasites, but if you're low on time, bacteria and virus are king, and this is incredibly high yield. This is not trying to be the pathoma guy, but when it comes to infectious disease, it is king on step 1, all right? Now you're Sketchy, expand on that if you must, but Sketchy is a great backbone. Sketchy has no such thing as useless material. As you go through your word banks, you get closer and closer to step, you realize, like, oh my god, every single cup and camel and tennis racket in Sketchy is quizzed. It all is, all the side effects, everything that it presents as, every disease manifestation, everything. So the more time you spend with Sketchy, the better. And I use this now every day in 3rd year when it comes to bugs and drugs. You will use it forever because the picture sticks in your mind. Life cycles, what I tried to do here is boil down the things that are absolutely high yield. I did not have a quite clear memory of what was going on in life cycles, but I will say that First Aid does a pretty darn good job of pulling out the stuff from the life cycles class that is high yield as hell on STEP. They pretty much directly relate. So in class, they start talking about gametogenesis, the production of sperm, production of eggs, the menstrual cycle, all the hormones involved in all of this that harkens back to endocrine. Tanner staging and puberty, the chromosomal disorders, moles, which is, you'll learn about that, it's a form of pregnancy. neoplasms, and then unfortunately, this embryology, which can be tough. The aortic arch, branchial arch, pouch derivatives. This is a form of embryology you're going to be discussing when you're discussing the development of the human in life cycles. It is tested like crazy on your world questions, and then on STEP, I definitely saw 2 or 3 questions relating directly to this. They're kind of hard to learn, but First Aid does a good job of giving you 2 pages that break these things down. Just try to find a mnemonic or something that makes it stick. And then you'll most likely see this on STEP, and then you'll most likely see it never again in your entire life. So cram that. So again, First Aid does a great job of pulling out the high stuff. For your tests in life cycles in class, histology is really, really heavy. So focus on that. It is somewhat on STEP. You'll see that. It'll be histology of, like, what does the normal testicular area look like, or the vas deferens, or the cross-section of the fallopian tube, or what certain gynecological cancers look like on histology. That stuff still is going to be on STEP, and so class tests it way more heavily than STEP does, but STEP does test it, so hang in there. When you're in class towards the end of life cycles, they'll start discussing death, dying, the end of life, geriatric medicine, stuff like that. That's not really high yield at all in STEP. I don't remember a single question on that. But the lectures are really cool. So it's kind of this time period where you can enjoy lectures and engage in them and kind of relax. The life cycles is good about tailoring the class to taper off as STEP approaches. It gets less and less intense. Now, it's not to say the tests aren't hard. It's just that it gets less and less intense as it approaches. So know this stuff for the test, but know also that this is not on STEP. So this is not an overlap. This is just a brief little display of pictures from First Aid that are... You will remember these pictures because you will revisit them over and over and over and over again, just to answer the same questions in World asked from a different perspective, and the same questions in class asked from a different perspective, over and over and over. So I thought First Aid did a great job of giving us nice, concise graphics. There are also some in slideshows, but it's kind of hard for me to pick them out because I don't have access to the slides anymore from class. So if you're using my OneNote, you'll notice that it gets real concise. I told everybody, like, up to DEMS, I can guarantee it's pretty valuable. Clear class-by-class information. Life cycles and idea kind of falls apart because, as you well know, life kind of falls apart, and step 1 gets really overwhelming. So these kind of start out, as you can see on the right, like it goes class-by-class breakdown, and then I kind of just got into a mode where I'm like, you know what, I'm just going to cram all that I can into these exam reviews. Which I kind of liked more because it's more, even more concise. So for exam 2, there's all your information. For exam 3, there's all your information. And what I did do on these was go back and really try to pull out what I thought the lecturers emphasized, which seemed to line up pretty well with the exams. In some cases, I thought lecturers were pretty good in ID and life cycles of repeating things they thought to be important. So in these exam reviews here, I thought I did a pretty good job to say, look, they thought this was super important. It helps you more on your tests than it does step 1, but again, OneNote is more to help you on tests, not step 1. I don't recommend revisiting OneNote, any of this, when you're studying for stuff, unless there was something in my OneNote that was really great for you. Otherwise, external resources are going to be much more concise, much more reviewed, and much more worthy than my OneNote. Okay, so you got exam reviews here in a very concise fashion. I do not go class by class. I apologize for that. Just get through these classes and pass them. Just pass them. So, 3rd year. It's coming up. By now, it sounds like everyone has been affronted with this, hey, you need to schedule everything, and you don't really know how because you've never done it. You've never done 3rd year. So I would like to give you what feedback I can right now, being in 3rd year and almost through with it. First off, it's amazing. I love it. Personally, if step 1 seems like a grueling, horrible process and lecture-based learning seems like a grueling, horrible process, have faith. It's about to completely change into a mode that I believe is much better for learning. You're going to be in the hospitals. You're going to be doing things. It's amazing. Some feedback you might have gotten is that whatever your interest is right now, you keep getting asked what kind of doctor you want to be and you don't know. That's totally appropriate not to know. If you have an interest, though, a lot of people say you can do it later to look better so you feel more prepared, do it later in the rotation. I will advise against that. I believe that you should do your interest in the first 5 rotations. I met with some other people today, other 4th years that generally agree, at least in the first 5. Some people like to do their main interest right after fall break. That happens at the beginning of August, and then rotation starts right after that, so you have a nice break, you're fresh, you're going into it. That's all well and good. I advise that you just do it early. Do it before it becomes the new year, because once the new year hits, once December hits and you have your Christmas break, which you do have, you're already getting pressured to be thinking about what line of work you want to go into, setting up your sub-Is, setting up your aways. Now this is mainly in the competitive specialties. urology, derm, ortho, things like that, they're going to be setting up aways pretty early, meaning away sub-Is, a rotation you do for 1 month in that specialty in another state in another program. Very cool experience. However, you might be scheduling this stuff before you've even done your surgical rotation or your rotation of interest. If it is internal medicine and you saved it to last, you don't know whether or not you want to do it. Maybe that's you haven't had that exposure. A lot of people get this exposure and then they change their mind. And if you did your interest last and you kind of coasted all year thinking, well, my interest is coming up, so like, I'm not really into this, I'm not into this, my interest is coming up. Then you get there and you didn't like it. You just blew through all your rotations and to give them all the energy you could have because you were looking to the future. So another reason to do it early. Do it early so you can really divide whether or not you're really into it or really not into it. These rotations are good at giving you that. What they're not good at giving you is the hyper specialties. You're not going to do cardiology, you're not going to do pulmonology. Certain surgical specialties you may not see because you can only do a couple specialties. So urology, ENT, dermatology, there's not going to be a lot of exposure to the specialized fields. So for that, I actually recommend going outside. You can switch your preceptors in third year. I recommend doing that if you're interested in these fields and getting that longitudinal experience with someone specifically. You can also get 2 preceptors. If you're considering 2 things, go ahead and get them. Spend a few shifts with them throughout the year and just get that taste of it, because the rotations, as you'll see by your scheduling, kind of cover the general things: family, internal med, women's care, pediatrics. And those are all wonderful fields. If you're interested in those, these are great exposure. If you're interested in something more nuanced that you don't see on that list, try to get that with precepting, something longitudinal, because you'll also get a better letter of recommendation out of it. And again, based on data, most students change their specialty choices, regardless of their initial interest. This is fact. Most third-year students change their mind. So that's why, again, I recommend doing your interest early, because you most likely going to change your mind. And you don't change your mind until you experience it. If you experience it late, not good. That being said, there's no wrong way to do third year. There's no wrong way to schedule it. There's absolutely no wrong way to schedule this. There's always time to do things. I'm not saying this to stress you out. You can pretty much schedule this in any order. There's concern for, hey, you should do medicine late to do better at step 2, or hey, you should do your hard stuff early, like hack and surgery back to back. There's no right way. No, medicine doesn't necessarily help you any better with step 2 than anything else, because everything's on step 2. So just do whatever fits for you. If you need to put your intense stuff at a certain time for life reasons and you want like the lighter weight stuff at another time, then do that and make that the priority. This is what your schedule ended up looking like coming back from Oasis. And you can see it's broken into blocks here. One thing I want you to note immediately, you see these days off: 7 days off, 24 days off, 35 days off. Those are all inaccurate. The only things you can count on are a 1-week break in August for fall break and a 2-week break over Christmas for Christmas break. Not 24 days. That's wrong. There are ICCs going on during these, which are wonderful and you're going to love, but they change the amount of days that are available. And at the end of the year, you don't get 35 days off. That's wrong. So you get 1 week in fall and you get 2 weeks in Christmas break. Depending on what rotation you're in, you're not guaranteed Thanksgiving. If you decide to work over the break because you moved your schedule around like I did, you're not guaranteed Christmas. Any other special things, holidays, weddings, things you want to get off for, email everyone well in advance. Do not wait till your rotation or your block starts to say, hey, by the way, I have a wedding that I'm in 2 weeks. That does not do well. But everything goes very well if you email them months in advance. Say, hey, I don't even know what rotation I'm going to be in November, or who my people will be, but I really need this time. It has to be a good reason, but if it is and you let them know well in advance, it helps them out and they will help you out. So again, this is what it ends up looking like. And that's that. So in third year, you can also do rural versions of everything. You can do rural emergency, rural OB-GYN, rural surgery. It's not the same as rural medicine that you see here, third line down the left, rural and community care. That's part of family. Family medicine is broken into adult, ambulatory, and rural, and that is its own thing. It's rural family med. What you can also do, though, is for these other things you're seeing here, almost all of them have a rural component that you can do. The rural pros, you can do more stuff. You're way more hands-on. There's not residence fellows, everything that need to learn more importantly than you. So you're not just retracting in surgery, you're first assist. And you are not just hearing about a patient, you're seeing the patient and reporting them to the attending because you are needed. The rural pros, there's a lot more breadth. These people that are doing primary care out there, they have such a wide skill set because there's not the specialists around, and so they're doing a lot more stuff. So if you're family med, you're going to be seeing inpatient patients, birthing their babies, and seeing them for the outpatient, post-surgery, all that stuff. So it's pretty cool. The con in that same department would be you're not seeing the really intense stuff and the subspecialty stuff. Anything too complicated, too whatever, they get sent off to a bigger facility. And that might be frustrating for you. It also can be a bit lonely. Some of these sites are pretty darn far away. You can't get back to Denver on the weekends. Some you can get back to Denver on the weekends. You can hang out. You can get kind of isolated. They move at a slower pace. You might work less hours. Maybe you want to work more hours to get more experience. Maybe getting off really isn't your bag. And overall, the rural sites may not be as busy. That's not ubiquitous. Some are much more busy because one person's doing a lot of things, wearing a lot of hats. But overall, you can assume it to be a little less busy, a little less intensity, a little less hours. And again, the interesting stuff is sent urban. So this is just something to keep in mind. We'll talk more about third year later on, but you can do rural versions of everything if you want more hands-on versions of things. And what I said at the top here, urban, there's this rumor that if you do urban, you want to do urban versions of things for your interest because there's big shots here that can give you big letters of rec. In my experience, this is again my experience, that's not true because there are so many other people involved in this educational process. Time with attendings can be difficult to get. And attending letters are what matter. When you go rural, you get time with that attending, and they get to know you. And even any attending in the academic setting, UCH, they want to write letters of rec, but they can't write a good one if they don't know you. And how are they going to know you if you're only seen for a little bit? So this actually kind of backfires. I think you get better letters of rec going rural. It may not be from the biggest people. I think if you want these letters from people you think would be esteemed in a certain career line, then make them your preceptor. You get that form of longitudinal time with them so they can get to know you. Not to say that you're not going to get meaningful experiences in urban and get to know some attendings. I found it more difficult. There's a lot more people in the mix, and the attendings are more busy wearing a lot of hats, and they kind of rely very heavily on the residents to be teaching you. And unfortunately, letters of rec from residents don't carry as much weight or weight at all when it comes to some schools. They want to hear from an attending. So keep this in mind. You don't have to develop attending relationships in the third year. You're going to get a lot in the fourth year because of your longitudinal things you're going to do then. But if you're trying to get letters of rec in the third year and you want those to be part of something you're doing earlier on, which is great, you're going to want to think about how you're going to get longitudinal relationships with people so they can actually write something valuable for you. This is something that I think is more important. Again, I do not think the order you do things is very important aside from putting your interest early. That's it. Otherwise, throw it out there like a crapshoot. What I do think is important is where you go for what rotation. All right? They're all very different. In some cases, they're all very similar because a lot of residents will rotate to the same place, and a lot of rumors you might be hearing about something being scary or not scary might actually be not true because it's a lot of the same staff. But in some cases, it is kind of true. In some cases, it's places you do not need to be going. They're bad places to learn. They are not valuable student experiences. This mainly happens when you get into private practice, rural, or when there's rotations really just trying to get more people on board. They're having trouble getting clinics. They might throw you into one that's just not good. They might throw you in a facility that's just not good. And this is what I would like you to talk to myself or other advisors about, other students. Our class, as well as the fourth year class, is trying to get our hands on this book where people year after year put in their feedback as a class and like what they thought of certain sites and kind of compile it to make this quite easy for you so you're not just going on my opinion. However, for you guys, especially that already know me, please email me. I have definite ideas about which ones are good for what and which ones aren't. Something to keep in mind that we discussed is keep proximity in mind. Even if you love a site and it's an hour drive either way in traffic, you're going to hate that, especially if you're getting up and these are 13-hour shifts and you're in traffic both directions. It doesn't matter how great your experience is. That's going to kind of tarnish it. And so think of proximity as well. So before we meet again, we're going to be meeting at the beginning of third year to talk about sites and kind of generalize what each one does well and each one does poorly. Before then, they're going to email you about your first rotation because you're going to get your schedule back and your rotation going to be, hey, welcome to Family Med. We'll see you in 3 weeks. And you're still gearing up for step one. You're like, this is the last shit I want to hear. You're stressing me out. But they're going to email you. They're going to say, where do you want to go for internal medicine? Where do you want to go for surgery? And they're going to want to know that. They're going to give you anywhere from 4 days to a week to respond. And you got to do it quick so you can get your priority. As soon as you know what your first rotation is, please email me. Don't wait for them to email you. Email me and tell me what your first rotation is, and please get my feedback if you haven't gotten it from somebody else. Again, anyone third, fourth year intern, so on and so forth. Or if you locate that book, which I'm going to look for you guys, where it compiles opinions. If you locate that, go with that. But if you're not sure, please email me, and I'll give you any advice I can on directing you to the site that is right for you. Again, they're all very different. Those of you in the longitudinal courses, you're having a very different form of education. I think the Denver Health LIC is the way we should teach medicine, but it's too resource intensive to do it. The pros, you're getting longitudinal relationships with 9 preceptors, and you're getting letters of rec from all of them. They know you for a year. That's amazing. But you don't interact with classmates as much. It's much more of an isolated thing. You interact with that group, and the LIC group becomes very tight, but you're not seeing the rest of the group too much outside of when you do these ICC weeks where you all get back together on campus. VAST, I please ask somebody else that's done it if you're interested in this. I have not done it. The people that I know that are doing it seem to like it. It's nice, again, because you get some more longitudinal. It's not a year long, but you get some more longitudinal relationships that you can capitalize on for mentorship, precepting, or letters of rec. But it's kind of a cool hybrid if you're indecisive about being fully longitudinal or fully scheduled individually. Colorado Springs, again, this is another longitudinal program. That group of 20 some odd students gets very close. It's a very tight-knit group from what we've seen. It's a small subset of the class. You want to keep that in mind beforehand if this cohort is the one you want to be a part of. Looking around, the complaints I've heard is there's a very serious lack of inpatient care. You're not getting exposed to the hospitals, anything inside the hospitals, and there's a lot of outpatient. That's what our group just came back with. They're trying to work on this as a relatively new program, but just know that in advance. If you thrive on outpatient, this is going to crush. And again, as mentioned, you're getting much better relationships with attendings. The stories I'm hearing is that attendings know them, they know about them. When it comes to recommending them or mentoring them or anything, it's going to be a more accurate experience. That's it for now, guys. Please take care of yourselves. Incorporate that R&R time. Breathe, meditate, be mindful, whatever it takes. And please, for the MS1s, continue to be that role model of understanding, energetic, encourage everybody to be wrong. I put this quote here: borderline enthusiastic about being wrong. Encourage people to just open their mouth and just say what they're thinking. Everyone's so afraid to be wrong in this profession. That's ridiculous. It's the only way you learn. So please make them feel safe for doing that. Pass down any wisdom you've taken in, and just keep this community of medicine growing towards a very loving and comfortable place to be. Sound good? All right, guys, please email me with anything. My email, I didn't write it down. It's Matthew, MATTHEW, FIORAVANTI@gmail.com. Email me anytime with anything. And for all of Team America, I love you. Good luck. I will see you after STEP. You're going to survive. You're going to do great. Oh, and a last note. If STEP's coming up and you're stressed out and you don't know if you can do it, you need some time off, something happened in your life, take the time. Take it off. Do not let anyone make you afraid of delaying STEP if that's what your heart of hearts tells you to do. You're not screwed. Nothing is ruined. You're going to be a physician. Everything's going to be fine. Take that time if you need it. What's worse is cramming this thing, making yourself miserable, letting some parts of your life fall apart that might be happening, because life doesn't stop. It doesn't. So take the time. It will work out. The school will work with you when you are dedicated to the fact that, I'll do the work, but it's not working right now. Take that time and continue to do that for yourself moving through this profession. This is a marathon, not a sprint. You're going to have to keep pushing back and pushing for your own humanity and making sure it is the priority in your own life as this goes on. This is just the beginning, all right? Take care of yourself, guys.